move on, do we want to do lawns like turf grass, weed type kind of stuff? You guys ready for that? Mitchell and Greg, I think I'll
Sounds good.
help do some questions on that. Okay, so we'll just jump right in for our lawn and weeds session this morning. So our first question that came into the question portal is, what is causing the round patches of dead grass in my Bermuda lawn? And before we get into it, I just want to say how much I appreciate that they told us what type of grass they had in their lawn because it's gonna make a difference. So take it away.
Well, I'll start, I guess. One question I would ask is, did the brown patches begin as green patches earlier in the year and they have turned brown? A common thing on Bermuda grass, you'll have brown patches that don't green up during when they're coming out of dormancy, and that can be attributed to something like spring dead spot, where actually the grass was infected with a fungus back in the fall, say late September, October timeframe, and then you don't really see the results of it until the following year when it comes out of dormancy, or it does not come out of dormancy with everything else. So that's a possibility, and if that's the case now, well, there's not much you can do about it at this point other than, just fertilize the existing Bermuda grass and encourage it to maybe come back in and fill in those areas. That's the benefit of a running grass like Bermuda grass. It can repair itself a little bit. But if that were the case, then you might think about using a fungicide application, in the fall of the year to help minimize any potential future damage from dead spot, if that were the case. Another possibility would be, is it Bermuda grass is dying in a Bermuda grass lawn? Did you have patches of annual bluegrass that are fading out? Because it's an annual, so it's going to die, and you leave brown patches out there. And a fellow told me one time that just all brown patches are not brown patch. Brown patches is a disease, and there are a lot of things that will cause brown patches, but when they die, you got brown patches out there. So annual bluegrass, or here in Middle Tennessee, I have a lot of little barley that's going out right now, leaving very distinct brown areas in the lawn where you had some good dense patches of little barley earlier. And the same thing can happen with the annual bluegrass, which is not uncommon in Bermuda grass turfs. It's a little early in the year for some of the foliar diseases that are associated more with humidity, like brown patch, which can affect Bermuda grass, or dollar spot, I guess. I haven't really seen any of it. I don't know that it's totally out of question, though. Greg, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think your first comment on was it green and then died, or did it just never come out? And that's the timing of identifying those disease issues. That would be the first. I do know that Dr. Samples and I actually saw some brown patch here on the plateau, believe it or not, here about a week ago, which I thought was crazy early, but it's not out of the possibility that could be the case. One thing that I would
earlier about some of the diseases related to humidity, and one of the things that I've noticed is that when in the spring of the year, when it becomes warm enough at night that it's not comfortable to sleep with the windows open, boy, that's a good indicator. When you're in the 70-degree range at night, then that's probably conditions, and we have hit that. So it's not out of question. You could have some, leaf spot going on there, or some brown patch, other fungal disease.
Most of the time, and I would ask this question to Mitchell, in terms of homeowners spraying lawns with fungicides for fungal diseases, what kind of recommendations do you make for that? Do you tend to tell homeowners to spray, or do you approach management from a cultural practice, or what?
Well, on the cool season grasses especially, my general recommendations are, do things to favor the growth of the grass. And if you check fungicide prices, you're going to find that they're the most expensive pesticide product out there. They have to be applied more frequently than the others. And when you compare that in the time that goes into it against the cost of new grass seed in the fall, I just encourage folks to maintain good practices and do a little overseeding in the fall on the cool season grasses. On Bermuda grass, doggone it, I mean, unless you've got something taking out big patches, it's not a whole lot of concern anyway, because it will recover typically. There are a few folks around here that are genuine enthusiasts, and they can probably do a pretty good job spraying. But that's the thing is, spraying anything on a broadcast basis, like over an entire lawn area, you've got to know the output of the equipment. It's got to be calibrated right so you can get the correct dose out there. And a lot of times it's a lot of homeowners are not going to go through those steps to make sure they're putting the right dose out and following those good schedules. So I said a whole lot to say that, no, I don't really encourage a lot of spraying.
And I think you hit on the biggest thing I tell people: follow a really good fertilization schedule. And our Tennessee turf grass and our publications, we've got information on there that gives you those timetables of when to fertilize, and fertilize at the correct amount, because a lot of times excess nitrogen levels in the soil will actually drive some brown patch and some other fungal disease. And that kind of even ties back into one of the horticulture questions you got earlier. Why is my dogwoods not blooming? People putting out excessive amounts of nitrogen, and a lot of those plants staying vegetative. Man, my lawn looks great. Mm-hmm. It's green and growing, but my dogwoods aren't blooming because I've got all this nitrogen there. My plants staying vegetative. And then, man, my beautiful lawn, which looks spectacular in April and start of May, now here we are in June, I've got all these big dead patches going on in my lawn. What's happening? Over nitrogen, too much nitrogen, or too much nitrogen late in the season. So don't love your landscape to death.
Yeah.
So take a measured approach to everything, and understand that despite your best efforts in whatever you do, you're still probably going to have some disease. Yeah. You're going to have some weeds. You're going to have some Japanese beetles. You're going to have some pests. Learn to live with it. And again, what's that economic threshold for what you're trying to deal with? With our turf grass, like right now, there's probably not a lot going on that you need to be doing other than mowing at a correct height.
Mowing on a regular basis at the correct height, not taking off too much. One thing, and I didn't notice any questions about it in the questions that were asked earlier, but on lawns around here that have common Bermuda grass, head smut is showing up in those, and that's where the seed heads get infected, and it is, instead of having a seed head, you got a black sooty mass on there, and then when you walk through it, it gets all over your clothes, your shoes. If you got a little white dog, the little white dog gets little black spots when she runs around outside. You track that in the house, and then you get it on the carpet, and boy, you've done messed up when you do that. And I mean, that's a fungus, but it doesn't respond well to fungicide treatment. So my suggestion there would be, mow it regular so you don't have a lot of seed head production. You won't see that issue, and you're going to see some anyway, but that's going to help minimize it. There's just not a lot to be done for that.
So I'm going to throw this one out to y'all, and there may not be any real good answer, but it says, how can I eliminate, or at least get under control, Johnson grass? I'm assuming that they're having Johnson grass in their lawn without using Roundup. Any thoughts?
So the whole question is Roundup or other potentially hazardous chemicals. Well, I mean, one thing, if it's not hazardous to the weed, it's not much good, I guess, from a control standpoint. But
and they said there's too much to pull. So if
too much to pull.
You can't use herbicides. I'm not sure what you.
I don't know any other option.
And the problem with even pulling it, if you leave any rhizomes down there, that stuff's coming back up. So
I mean, that's the same as pruning, right? When you break the rhizomes up, so you just encourage them over.
Yeah, short answer, no.
No, I mean, now if the concern about using the herbicide is, you're going to be damaging desirable grasses as well as the Johnson grass, maybe use, take the spot spray approach and make yourself a little hooded sprayer. Use something like a soda bottle, a milk jug that you create a hood that fits over the end of your spray wand and attach it. Heck, duct tape is good for lots of stuff, and you can duct tape that thing in place, and then you just set it right down over your target and you squeeze the trigger, and boom, you treated that spot. You don't worry about collateral damage as much because you've got a very focused application there. Using a spray dye indicator, a colorant will let you know what you treated and what you haven't treated. So you're not retreating the same spot 3 times and missing this one over here entirely. Like grass herbicide, glyphosate is very effective against, or about as effective as anything else is going to be against Johnson grass. Using something with sethoxidum, post would be another option, I guess, but you're not going to control it without an herbicide unless you make it your life's goal to produce the finest Johnson grass, in the state. In that case, you probably will fail at it because then you're trying to grow it. So I don't know.
That's a good point. That's a
The
good
one,
point.
the one thing that I would say on controlling Johnson grass with glyphosate to me is using a wick method. Johnson grass gets up really quick, gets vegetative over the top of everything else. You can use a wick method to brush that grass and get the herbicide onto the grass without spraying it onto the rest of the
And if they're
grass.
serious about it, there are small scale little wick applicators that can be used for smaller areas. And all it does is just, a fabric of some sort that you've impregnated with glyphosate solution. And it just kind of paints it on those taller leaves and keeps it off the shorter, desirable grasses underneath. But you look at, some of the supply companies, AM Leonard is one, sells a lot of stuff like that. So that's, they're out there. There are options out there if you want to go that route.
That's what I'd recommend, is wicking it on so you don't have to spray, but not much options for controlling it.
Good potential options for them. Thanks, guys.